Sometimes we meet people who change the course of our lives without us even realizing it at the time. We love them, not because they are perfect, but because they make us feel alive. They awaken something inside us that we didn't know existed. But what happens when love isn't enough? When the heart longs for something, but the world around us pulls us in different directions? This is the story of Arjun, a young dreamer from a small village, and Meera, a girl whose heart was as free as the river that ran through their home. In a world bound by duty, expectations, and sacrifice, their love was pure, but fleeting, never truly given the chance to grow. Join me as we walk through their journey, a tale of love that never truly dies, even when it seems like life has separated them forever. In the quaint village of Kalikapur, nestled at the foot of sprawling hills and beside a shimmering river, life followed a quiet rhythm. The villagers went about their days tending to crops, livestock, and the simple duties that held the fabric of the village together. The world here was peaceful but also bound by tradition, and for many of the younger generation, the weight of expectations and limitations was a constant pressure. Among them was Arjun, an 18-year-old boy whose heart and soul seemed to yearn for something more. His world had always been one of simplicity, though his dreams were anything but. Raised by his widowed mother, Arjun had grown up in a home where love was abundant, but material wealth was scarce. His father had died when he was young, and since then his mother had worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Despite their modest life, she had given Arjun a sense of purpose and hope, always telling him that he could be anything he wanted as long as he worked hard enough for it. But even as he looked at his mother's smiling face, Arjun felt a restlessness within. His escape from this feeling was the riverbank. Every evening, after completing his chores, Arjun would walk the familiar path to the water's edge, where the silence wrapped him in a kind of solace he couldn't find anywhere else. Here he would sit on the rocks, his legs dangling into the cool water, lost in his thoughts. It was the only time he could fully breathe, away from the small, predictable life that awaited him every day. With a notebook and a pencil in hand, he would sketch the landscape, the river flowing freely, the birds soaring above, the far-off hills on the horizon. He would write stories, weaving them from the beauty he saw and the dreams he longed for. The river, in many ways, became his companion, its endless flow mirroring the restlessness in his own heart. But then, one evening, everything changed. As the sun set, casting a golden light across the river's surface, Arjun noticed something different. Sitting under the old banyan tree, which had been a constant in his visits to the riverbank, was a girl. Her back was to him, but something about her captivated him. She was sketching intently, completely absorbed in her work. He couldn't help but watch her, mesmerized by the way her hands moved across the paper, capturing something beautiful and profound. Her presence seemed to complement the peace of the surroundings, and for a moment it felt like the world had slowed down. Arjun had never seen her before. She was a stranger in this place he thought he knew so well. Intrigued, he stayed hidden, observing her quietly, unsure of what to do. That night, Arjun lay awake, her image haunting him. Her long dark hair, the curve of her face, the delicate movement of her hands. It all lingered in his mind like an unfinished story. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was somehow connected to his own untold dreams. Who was she? Why did she stir something inside of him? His thoughts turned to the possibilities. Could she be an artist? Had she moved to the village recently? The questions swirled endlessly, each one adding to the intrigue. Days passed and Arjun began to search for her. He would walk around the village, hoping to catch a glimpse of her again. And then, one afternoon, at the bustling market, he saw her. She stood by a fruit stall, looking at the ripe mangoes, her hands gently brushing over the fruit as if searching for the perfect one. Arjun's heart skipped a beat. It was her. Without thinking, he stepped forward and offered to help carry the basket of fruits she had just picked up. She looked up at him, surprised, but then smiled. The smile was warm, genuine, and it made Arjun's heart race. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying a kindness that felt like a gentle breeze. They exchanged a few words, and for a brief moment it felt as though time had stopped. Her name was Meera, and she had recently moved to the village with her family. Her father had lost his job in the city, and after struggling to find work, they had decided to move to the village in search of a simpler life. Meera explained that she had always loved to paint, though her father didn't understand the importance of it. "He thinks it's a waste of time," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But for me, painting is everything. It's the only way I can make sense of the world." Arjun, in turn, shared his own dreams. "I want to be a writer," he said, his eyes lighting up with passion. "I want to tell stories that make people feel something. Stories that touch the heart." Meera's eyes sparkled as she listened to him, and for the first time, Arjun felt understood. There was something about her spirit, her depth, that resonated with him in a way he had never experienced before. They talked for hours, sharing their dreams, their frustrations, and the things that held them back. Meera spoke about her father's pressure to marry well and secure their future. She was young, full of dreams, yet felt trapped by the expectations placed upon her. In the days that followed, Arjun and Meera met often. They would sit by the river, talk under the banyan tree, and share their thoughts and ideas with each other. Their connection grew, and Arjun realized with a sense of awe that he had fallen in love with her. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the way she saw the world, the way she expressed herself through art, the way she cared deeply about the people in her life. Meera was the kind of person who made him want to be better, to push beyond his limitations and pursue his dreams without fear. But even as his feelings for her deepened, Arjun felt the looming shadow of reality. Meera's family was already making plans for her future. One evening, as they sat by the river, her expression shifted. "Arjun," she said quietly, "I have to tell you something. My parents, they've arranged my marriage." Arjun's heart sank. "What do you mean?" he asked, barely able to comprehend her words. "They've found someone for me," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "A man from the city. He's wealthy, and they think it's the best way forward for our family. I don't have a choice." The words felt like a punch to his chest. He wanted to shout, to tell her that love was enough, that they could run away and build a life together. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw the same pain and conflict that he felt. "But what about your dreams? What about us?" he asked desperately. Meera's gaze dropped to the ground. "I love you, Arjun. I do. But I can't betray my family. They've already sacrificed so much for me. I can't turn my back on them now." Arjun felt a crushing emptiness in his chest. He wanted to fight for her, to convince her that they could build something beautiful, but deep down, he knew that she had already made her choice. The burden of duty weighed too heavily on her heart. Days turned into weeks, and the preparations for Meera's wedding took shape. Arjun retreated into himself, unable to bear the thought of her marrying another. He poured his pain into his writing, the words flowing freely, but carrying a deep sorrow. His stories began to reflect the rawness of his own heartache, and though he gained recognition for his writing, it felt hollow without her. On the day of the wedding, Arjun stood at a distance, watching as Meera, now adorned in bridal finery, was led to the ceremony. She looked radiant, but her eyes betrayed the sorrow she carried. As she left the village with her new husband, Arjun felt a deep sense of loss. She was gone, and so was the life he had dreamed of with her. Years passed, and Arjun's name became known far and wide as a talented author. His works were celebrated for their emotional depth, yet his heart remained heavy with the memories of Meera. He often returned to the village, visiting the riverbank, the fields, and the places where they had shared their most intimate moments. One afternoon, as he sat by the banyan tree, lost in his thoughts, he heard a voice, soft, familiar, and filled with warmth. "Arjun." He turned, and there she was. Time had passed, and both of them had changed, but the connection between them was still undeniable. Meera stood before him, no longer the girl he had once known, but still the same person who had touched his heart so deeply. They sat together, talking for hours, sharing the stories of their lives since they last saw each other. Meera spoke of her marriage, the struggles she had faced, and the ways she had tried to hold on to her art despite everything. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" she asked, her voice tinged with regret. "Every day," Arjun replied, his voice full of raw honesty. "But what we had, even for a moment, was enough to last a lifetime." They sat in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the land. Though they had lost each other, their love had endured in the memories they shared. In that moment, they both understood that love, in its purest form, wasn't always about being together. It was about the moments they had, the depth of their connection, and the way their hearts would forever remain intertwined, no matter the distance. In the end, Arjun and Meera's love story may not have been the fairy tale they both dreamed of, but it was real, raw, beautiful, and unforgettable. Life is full of choices, sacrifices, and heartache, and sometimes the people we love are the ones we must let go. Yet the love they shared lingered like a silent promise, always present, always remembered. Though time and circumstances tore them apart, the bond they forged could never be broken. Love, after all, isn't always about having forever. Sometimes it's about the moments that define us, the memories that stay with us, and the hearts that remain intertwined no matter the distance or the passage of time. As Arjun and Meera continue their separate paths, their love lives on. In the stories they tell, in the art they create, and in the hearts that still ache for the dreams they once shared. This is the beauty of love. It doesn't always last, but it changes us forever.